He used my retirement to build a new life. The envelope was hidden behind the furnace, sealed in thick plastic, marked tax year 2004. Inside, a single sheet of paper, rows of deposits, 6 figures long, all under a bank I had never heard of. It was more than a secret. It was financial infidelity. My jaw clenched. My back straightened like I had no spine left to curve. I stood there, in the house I helped pay off, feeling like I'd never lived in it at all. What if your whole retirement was written in someone else's name? Her name was Gloria, 67 years old, a retired nurse who once drove 30 miles every weekend to care for patients in nursing homes across rural Wisconsin. She lived in a pale green house with white shutters, just outside the town of Baraboo. Quiet, unassuming, the kind of home that smelled like tea and books and lemon oil. Her husband was Harold, 70, a retired accountant who always wore pressed shirts, even on Sundays. He had a way of explaining things that made others nod, even when they didn't understand. They'd been married for 35 years. She trusted him with everything. The story does not begin in that house. It begins at the county benefits office 2 weeks after Harold left. Gloria had walked in, holding a folder of medical bills, her hand slightly shaking, and asked to confirm which retirement benefits she still had access to. The woman behind the desk clicked her tongue, narrowed her eyes at the screen, and said, "There's no IRA listed under your name, ma'am." Just that. No explanation. No apology. No understanding of what such a sentence can do to a woman who believed she had planned for everything. Harold had left quietly. He told her he needed space. He packed a single suitcase and drove away in their second-hand Subaru. She had thought it was just an argument, a long, silent one, but a week later, the divorce papers arrived. In the envelope, no note, just a clean, clinical document requesting separation of assets and dissolution of marriage. 2 days later, Gloria saw Harold again, this time at the courthouse. He walked in with a woman, at least 20 years younger. She had polished nails, a sleek blazer, and laughed like she belonged in every room. Gloria didn't look at Harold. She looked at the lawyer beside him, young, sharp, holding a file too thick for a simple divorce. Back home, she sat in the living room now, echoing with silence, and stared at the bills on the table. The retirement funds were supposed to be in their joint plan. Harold had told her that. Every year, he said, "Don't worry about it. I'm setting us up for the long run." He had handled all the finances, the taxes, the savings. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? She thought they were building a future together. Instead, it was a slow, deliberate case of financial betrayal in marriage. He was the kind of man who filed everything alphabetically, who clipped coupons and color-coded folders. She thought of that as love, as care. It was easier than facing the truth, easier than asking. Years earlier, she'd once seen him slide a bundle of papers into a locked drawer. He said it was just paperwork from his old firm. Not important, he'd said. Just technical stuff. She had let it go. The drawer had stayed locked for over a decade. Now, in the middle of her kitchen, she stood holding a flashlight and a flathead screwdriver. She jimmied the drawer open with the steady hands of someone who had once stitched wounds and bandaged bruises. Inside bank statements, unopened letters, and a sealed plastic envelope marked tax year 2004. She opened it on the counter. What she found inside felt like something out of another woman's life. A statement from a retirement account held solely in Harold's name. Deposits going back 15 years. Total balance over $300,000. It wasn't just a hidden fund. It was her retirement savings. Taken, rewritten, erased. The address listed on the account, a post office box in a nearby county she had never visited. She flipped through more documents. There were beneficiary designations, none listing her name. Financial planning notes in Harold's handwriting, dated years ago. One note read, "Contingency for life partner," with a line drawn next to a woman's name she didn't recognize. It was more than betrayal. It was financial infidelity calculated and buried deep. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt the air leave my chest like someone had punched a hole through my back and let the wind whistle through. She read every line, every date, every transfer. Then she poured herself a glass of water and let it overflow. She did not move, did not blink, just stood still, water spilling over her fingers, watching it pool around her feet. Later that night, she sat on the floor. The documents spread around her like feathers from a gutted pillow. The heater ticked in the corner. Outside, it was snowing. She looked around the room she had dusted for decades. The dining chairs Harold never let her replace. The calendar still pinned to March, when he first began acting distant. She remembered meals eaten in silence, holidays skipped without explanation, late-night phone calls he never explained. It had all been leading to this. That was when she whispered not to anyone in the room, because no one was there but to something beyond the silence. I should have asked when he first locked that drawer, but I wanted to believe peace was worth more than answers. She saw the truth not as a sudden flash, but a slow unraveling, like a thread tugged from a sweater, until nothing warm was left. He used my retirement to build a new life, and he started doing it long before he left. There's something dangerous about the way we were taught to trust. In Gloria's world, a good wife stayed loyal, stayed quiet, and stayed out of the numbers. Harold had always managed the bills, the taxes, the plans. He filed everything away in neat folders. She thought that meant he cared. But love built on silence is not safety. It is a door, locked from the inside. For years, Harold used marital income, Gloria's income, to fund a private IRA she never saw. He knew exactly what he was doing. Each deposit was timed, each paper signed. While she paid off the house and stretched grocery money, he diverted thousands into an account only he could touch. When he walked out, he didn't just take their Subaru and his suitcase. He took 35 years of shared labor and hid it under his name. It was not just deception. It was financial infidelity designed to look like trust. And Gloria, she let him. She never asked about the retirement, never checked a statement, not once. Because in her mind, to question him was to suggest she didn't believe in the marriage. She thought love meant trusting with closed eyes. That's the myth too many women believe when it comes to money and marriage. So she stayed quiet. She wanted to keep the peace, not knowing peace was already gone. But betrayal, financial or otherwise, always leaves evidence. When she found the old envelope and realized the scope of what had been taken, she did not fall apart. She did what she had done her whole life. She got organized. She pulled tax returns and pay stubs, highlighted deposits, printed every document she could prove was earned during the marriage. And then she did something most women in her shoes never think to do. She found a lawyer, not a favor from a cousin, not someone her church recommended, a certified elder law attorney from Dane County, who knew how hidden assets after divorce worked, and how grey divorce over 60 had its own language in court. They filed a motion to reopen the settlement. The original divorce had been finalized without disclosure of Harold's private IRA over $300,000 funded during the marriage. That omission wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Under Wisconsin's equitable distribution laws, any retirement funds earned after the wedding, no matter whose name they're in, must be counted as marital property. The courtroom was cold. Harold showed up with the same lawyer. He didn't look at her. Gloria sat still as her attorney spoke, calm, factual, line by line. She watched the life she never knew she had built laid out on a screen. Harold had moved on, but he had tried to leave with everything. The judge ruled in her favor. Gloria was awarded 40% of the hidden IRA, more than $120,000. Harold was ordered to pay all legal costs. The court placed a permanent record of asset concealment under his name. She didn't get back the years, but she got back enough to live without fear. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a reckoning. It was the beginning of her divorce recovery. It was what happens when a woman stops being quiet and begins to answer for everything that was taken from her. Gloria moved out of the house in early spring. She didn't pack much, just a few boxes, a photo album with worn corners, and the old ceramic teapot her mother had passed down. Everything else could stay. The curtains, the couch, the kitchen table where Harold used to spread out the bills. She left it all behind, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. She rented a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of Portage, just 20 miles north. It had a small balcony that overlooked a park. She bought a rocking chair, hung up wind chimes, filled the windowsill with herbs in tiny ceramic pots. For the first time in decades, she opened a checking account in her name only. She joined the local community center, signed up for a digital literacy class, and learned how to track expenses on her own. Every morning, she made tea and sat with her notebook, not to journal, to document. Every step she took during the court process, every letter, every form, every deadline, she wrote it all down in simple, handwritten pages. Then she printed copies, brought them to the senior women's group at church. She didn't say Harold's name. She didn't need to. The women understood. Some had lived it. Others feared they would. A month later, she was asked to speak at a local event for women going through late-life divorce. She wore a navy cardigan and brought a stack of folders. She stood behind the podium and told them how the law worked. Slowly, plainly, like she was describing how to boil water. She didn't have to dramatize it, because financial infidelity doesn't need drama to destroy lives. Afterward, a woman in her 70s hugged her and whispered, "I thought I was the only one." Gloria didn't cry. She just nodded. She understood what it meant to feel invisible in your own story. As for Harold, no one heard much about him after the court ruling. He kept the house, but it was quiet now. The woman he had left with was long gone. His name, once clean, was now attached to a public record of financial concealment. Gloria never mentioned him again, not out of spite, but because he simply didn't belong in the part of the story she was writing next. There was no dramatic ending, just a quiet one, and sometimes that's enough. There are stories that collapse you, and then there are stories that rebuild you, one legal document at a time. If you've spent your whole marriage letting someone else handle the money, start here. Open every drawer, every envelope. Look for accounts that don't bear your name. Ask for printed copies of every retirement fund tied to your household. Write one sentence to someone you trust. "I need help reviewing my financial future." If you're still married, do it now. If you're divorced, do it anyway. And if you're scared of what you might find, that's exactly why you must look. Leave a comment, "I open the drawer." That one line might be the moment you rewrite your future. And if you've been through this, share your story, because another woman is sitting in the dark, thinking she's alone. And she isn't. Not anymore.